Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Dr. Burchett Show. Thank you for joining us today. I have a very special guest. This is my cousin, Drew Burchett, coming to us live from Cincinnati, Ohio. Drew, thanks for coming. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
So, Drew recently completed, I was going to say ran, but you did more than ran, an Ironman. That is
Yeah.
badass and nothing short. Remind us how far an Ironman is. I know it's a marathon run, but I don't know how far the bike and swim is.
So you start off with a 2.4 mile swim, and then you transition into a 112 mile bike, and then finish with a full marathon.
Dude, that's impressive. And that's impressive. When I saw you were running this and you did it, I was like, wow, I don't know that I got that in me. You know? Like, I think I could do a marathon, but an Ironman is beyond legit.
Yeah.
And you mentioned, one of the things I want to talk about is you mentioned you lost 30 pounds in the process of training. So I was curious, we can talk kind of about that and what motivated you to do an Ironman. I kind of want to
hmm
break down, like, what kind of beliefs do you have to complete an Ironman? I mean, you gotta believe in yourself. You gotta believe that you can do it. Things like that.
hmm
And, get in a little bit to the nuts and bolts of your training and and your nutrition. So a lot to talk about here. And we talked about this before. You are a medical person, being that you have a PhD in physical therapy.
Correct.
So muscles and joints you know about in your daily work. So I think that adds to your kind of credibility on this topic.
Okay. Yeah.
So, I'll be honest, I didn't know you were into. Are you into marathons? Are you into this kind of thing? How did you get into to running an Ironman?
Well, my wife is when I met her, she was a runner. She's a collegiate soccer player, and I met her, and she decided that she wanted to do a half marathon, and she said I should join her. So, reluctantly, I started running a little bit. I did my first half marathon. It was a horrible, horrible time.
How
Um,
long ago was that?
well, let's see here. That was 2011 or 12, 2011, 11, 12,
So
something like that.
maybe 3 or 4 years ago, you started
Yeah.
doing a half marathon for your wife.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people like to hear that.
Yeah, I'm sure. But I had a terrible time. I was cramping, muscle cramping. At mile 7, I had to walk the end of it. Um, and being a extremely competitive person, I decided, let's see here, 4 weeks later, I was going to run the Flying Pig, the half marathon that's in Cincinnati, which is a pretty world famous marathon. And so I ran that one. I did a lot better than I thought, and from that point on, I was just kind of hooked as far
And
as
and
the
that
races.
that one was just a month after your first one.
Correct.
So did you like not train very much for the first one, and then you kind of figured it out? And what changed between?
I discovered a lot of things about my body and what I have to take in during the races. We use a lot of sodium during our races,
Mm-hmm.
especially. I'm a very, very, very heavy sweater.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, so, and I can go into all sorts of this a little bit later, but
Sure.
so I would sweat so much that I would lose my sodium content, and I would literally just start cramping,
Wow.
and go into almost full body cramps from it.
Sounds pretty
So
severe.
I discovered that if I would take in something that had a little, instead of just drinking water throughout the race, take in something that had more sodium in it, I would be able to run further distances without cramping.
What do you drink that has more sodium?
Well, during that race, I decided that I was going to take a Camelback full of Gatorade,
Okay.
which would provide some sodium and some just general sugar, basically fuel to get you through the race.
Yeah.
Um, what I do now is completely different than what I did then, and it's been a pretty interesting evolution from something off the shelf like Gatorade to what I have to take in now, to be able to do 12 plus hours of exercise.
12 plus hours. That's crazy, but this is really interesting. Like, you're kind of experimenting with your body, figuring
Exactly.
out on the first one, oh, in the middle of the race, shit, I cramp, this isn't working. Oh, I need to take in more. And then you start with, like, I think most people would probably turn to Gatorade. Oh, because it's sold with, you know, fluids and electrolytes, and,
Hmm.
it's, it's kind of like, sports Kool-Aid, really. I'm
Exactly.
interested I'm curious. I'm sure people watching are wondering, well, what does he do now? But let's hold on that for a second.
Yeah.
So you got into the half marathons, and then how did it progress to wanting to do an Ironman?
I did. I think I did two other half marathons after that, and I started to actually enjoy them. And I noticed a change in my body. I was closer to 250 pounds at that point, but I noticed a change in my body when I was training for it and running. That I lost a little bit of weight, not like I did for this, but just the exercise dropped 10 pounds, and I was happy about that.
So for
So
you, training for these half marathons was a way to lose some weight.
yeah, yeah, that was. I think that was the benefit. But once again, it's something I needed some competition in my life. After sports are gone, I feel like I just need competition. So that's where I turned my competitive edge to, was training and seeing if I could beat my time and things like that.
Competing against yourself motivated you to keep doing it.
Exactly. So then I was.
Let me ask you. I'm sorry to
Yeah,
keep interrupting you, but you're
yeah,
saying things that I think are interesting. That you said you kind of learned to enjoy it.
hmm
What do you enjoy about running half marathons?
I would say, once again, it was always competitiveness is what always gets me. But that runner's high that everybody talks about. Right as you get to mile 6 or 7, you really
Mm-hmm.
don't feel. Um, you don't hurt. Your legs don't hurt. You're not tired. You're just taking in all the scenery. The first half marathon that I ran was in through the hills of Kentucky, in
Mm-hmm.
like horse country down in Lexington. So there's beautiful horse farms, and I mean animals everywhere. It's just pretty scenery that you can run and take it all in. So I think that's part of it as well.
And so you like the feeling, the kind of natural endorphins where you get going for a while, and your body actually has, natural. I looked this stuff up recently, but endorphins are thought to be these natural morphines where when you go running or you get this high, it's actually your body releasing this stuff, and it relieves pain, it lowers anxiety, like all of these benefits of natural exercise. And people get
Mm-hmm.
hooked on it. They like it. They
Yeah.
like that feeling, and then it sounds like you're running and you just enjoy the scenery and stuff. So
Mm-hmm.
I get it. Good for you. Okay, continue on your story on how you ended up at marathon at an Ironman.
So let's see here. Not last year, but the year before, I was just flipping through the channels on Sunday morning, and the Ironman World Championship. They do a playback a couple weeks after, well, I guess it's probably a month or so after the actual World Championship in Hawaii.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I looked at it, and I started watching it, and it was just amazing to see. I mean, the high level athletes are just unbelievable what they can do. It's just, I mean, nothing that my body will never let me go to that level. But so there's that part of it, and then they call everybody else the age groupers, and they're just the people that have qualified for that race, or they have like an Ironman Foundation spot, or there's other ways to qualify for it through legacy and different things like that. But people that have lost loved ones, or that have been on the same journey that I was,
Mm-hmm.
losing weight to get there.
Mm-hmm.
And you look at these people, and you say, there's no way they're going to be able to complete this. There's a woman that was 310 pounds, and how is she going to
310
run?
pounds, and she was doing the Ironman.
Correct.
Wow.
Correct. So you look
What
at
was
them,
she
and
thinking?
I don't know, but she finished. She finished, and that's the
Wow.
key with everything. So after watching that, I was really inspired by seeing what they could do,
Yeah.
um, and I decided that I wanted to complete a triathlon, just in general, because it looked like fun. I enjoy riding bikes. Okay, so I'll get a bike and start riding. But I told myself at that point that I would never go above the half distance Ironman, because of my history of cramping. Like I couldn't even get through a half marathon without cramping. How am I going to get through, a 56-mile bike ride and a half marathon without cramping?
This cramping
So
thing really holding you back. That's
big
interesting.
time,
Okay.
time. So at that point, so last year, my A race, my goal was to complete a half Ironman. So I did in the first year, I did a sprint distance triathlon in April, which is a real short race. It took me an hour and 21 minutes. Short race, had fun. 400-meter swim, 12-mile bike ride, and then a 5K run. And after I did that one, I was absolutely hooked. It was so intense, passing people and trying to catch somebody in front of you. It turned into a more of a competition game for
You
me.
you love the race, the
I sure
chase.
do. I sure do.
Wow.
Uh, and then I transitioned. I did an Olympic distance, which is basically double the distance of a sprint
Sprint,
triathlon.
yeah.
And then I decided to do my half distance Ironman up at Cedar Point in Sandusky, Ohio,
Uh-huh.
which is not an Ironman branded event, but it's the same distance. It's
Yeah,
called
yeah.
Rip 3 was the company.
Okay.
So I completed that one. I
So
had a really tough time on that one.
on the half Ironman.
Um, and once again, I still hadn't figured out exactly what I needed to do nutrition wise during.
Okay, so how much time are we talking? Like the sprint one takes how long, and then
So my first one that I ever did was a sprint. It took me like an hour and 22 minutes, something along those lines.
and
Um,
then there was
Olympic,
another Olympic. How long? What time? Kind
you can basically just double the time.
of. Okay,
So over 2 hours.
couple
The
hours. So
two
that
hour, I think 2:38 was my first one.
okay,
Something like that.
and then your halfer. How long are we talking for that?
So my half one, like I said, I had a really tough time. I finished the bike ride. I did great with that, and I started running. And at mile 2, I started cramping in my calf muscles. So I knew it was going to be a tough.
Bummer.
Yeah, it ended up being really tough. I did it in 6 hours and 8 minutes. So that
That sounds long. I have no idea. I mean, it sounds fine to me.
yeah,
That's long. That 6 hours is a
um,
long race.
yeah. I think it took me 2 hours and 45 minutes to do the half marathon portion of it. So that's why it was rough. I did a lot of walking on that one.
Sounds like you're saying you really struggled, again with this kind of cramping and,
Yeah.
and sodium issue. Um, okay, let's push pause on this one. This kind of just gives the intro of your Ironman. So, oh, wait a minute. Let me let you finish. So you did the halfer and you finished. It was still hard with the cramping. How did you end up saying, I want to do the full Ironman?
So at the end of that, I really started researching nutrition stuff and talking to different people, talking to people that have done full distance Ironman races, and actually talked to a lady that's part of the little triathlon club that I train with. Um, and she said, "Well, why don't I do a sweat test on you?" I didn't know what she was doing.
Like
So
a
it's a
like a
test.
chloride sweat test?
So they
Sodium?
basically push them. I don't even know what the medication is. They push a medication into your arm, and then out comes sweat. It just causes the sweat glands to open up, and they run it through a machine and tells you how concentrated your sweat is with sodium, essentially.
I've heard of that for diagnosing cystic fibrosis. That's the
It's
thing
the
that
exact
comes to
same thing.
mind. Yeah, sweat
It's the
test.
exact same test.
Chloride sweat test is I think of what they call that. Anyway,
Okay.
so you did that.
So I did that, and they basically you have to measure yourself. So you run in different temperatures, and you tell this lady exactly how much weight you lost. So we're talking fluid loss,
Yeah.
and you have to tell her what you took in. This many sips of water, and blah blah blah. And then what she does is then takes the concentration of sodium in your sweat, and then we'll actually do a math problem and tell you
She
how
can
many
figure out. Yeah.
milligrams per hour that you lose or per 30 minutes.
I
And
see. And
and then
puts
she puts
together a
together a
formula.
little plan for you.
Who is this person like an endocrinologist? Who is this?
You know what?
What kind of specialist are they?
She's actually a nurse anesthetist.
Uh-huh.
She does this on the side, and she's actually a USA triathlon certified coach. So
Wow.
she coaches, and so she's got a background, and I think she's a PhD nutritionist too.
Okay.
She's got a lot of degrees
So
in
you
that stuff.
started doing that with her, and then did you notice a change when you started kind of adjusting? And at some point, you're like, okay, I'm ready. We got this figured out. Did you
Yeah,
do another halfer, or did you go for the full?
I did another half. I did another half distance. So I trained over the winter, and then I trained in all the way through about February, and then I finally decided I was going to do another half, and I was going to push for the full distance because I could get a lot further and I could run further. So, and then I also ran a marathon, a full marathon, because I'd never done that before, just to
Mm-hmm.
make sure I could do it.
Yeah.
But on my second half distance Ironman, it was a complete difference in what happened, and I have to take in about 3,000 milligrams of sodium an hour, which is almost ridiculous, according
Three
to
grams of sodium an hour. That's a lot of
correct.
sodium, man. That's a
Correct.
lot of salt.
But that's what I output. So that'll keep me at a normal level.
Wow, that's crazy.
And then so my second half distance Ironman was 5 hours and 4 minutes. So I cut.
Wow, you
Uh,
chopped a ton of time off of that.
yeah.
Good for you.
So anyway,
And then, so you did the second one, and then you did a marathon. Too many questions, Drew. Just too many
it's a,
questions I want to ask. How was the marathon?
it was good. I ran that. It's like I said, it's a world renowned marathon in Cincinnati. It's called the Flying Pig. It attracts some pretty big name runners to it. It's a very hilly marathon because we're pretty hilly in Cincinnati here. Um, and then at about mile 24, 25, I got just a little bit of cramping, but I was able to complete it, and I was happy with my first time for a marathon.
And were
Uh,
you pumping 3 grams of sodium per hour with this?
I was doing a little bit less. It wasn't that hot that day, so it all depends on the level,
How
the
much
heat
you're
and
how
humidity.
much you're sweating, basically.
Correct, exactly.
I just looked up the daily allowance for sodium from the U.S. RDA, and it's 2.4 grams per
Yeah,
day.
yeah,
So you are a sodium. I'm not going to call you a loser, but you lose sodium
yeah.
rapidly. That's impressive. So you're taking more than the daily allowance of sodium in per hour when you're doing these things. That's like
Right.
that makes you kind of look back on the beginning and be like, how did I finish anything? You know,
Exactly, exactly.
that's impressive. That sounds severe.
I hold her record. This lady that does the sweat test. I hold the record for um, amount of sweat loss in a 5 mile run, or amount of poundage loss in a 5 mile run.
Wow.
So, and just in sheer water volume, I would lose like 4.5 pounds. Was one
Wow.
time I did 4.5 pounds in a 5 mile run, but it was like 89 degrees with 100% humidity.
If you were a boxer, you were in some weight class where you had to like drop cut weight to do that, you would be an asset on the team because you could like cut a ton of weight and then bounce back to a heavier weight and have a significant advantage.
I guess.
Okay, so you got through the marathon pretty well, and you did the next half Ironman,
Correct.
and felt a lot better on that. Cut your time a bunch. So, and I maybe we should push pause again. I want to know what motivated you to do the next level.
Um, I've got a lot of friends that I train with that are at that level, and they looked at me and said, you're going to do great. If you do it, you'll do great. You've got everything figured out. You know exactly what you need to do. Just push forward and do it. Just go for it. So, at that point, it was I did the half distance, and now I feel good doing the half distance. I didn't cramp. I didn't have a bad day. I was smiling across the finish line. I need
Mm-hmm.
to figure out where my new where my edge, where can I get to? Where's my limit? Is what I basically was deciding. So I'm just going to push forward and do it. Um, so
So you got, and I like your stepwise. That makes sense. It's not like you're some guy. But Ellie's uncle just up and did an Ironman.
really,
Like, I mean, he trained, but it's not like over a period of years he did more and more and more. I think his time was like 15 hours. He finished. I couldn't believe it. I didn't think he was going
yeah,
to do it. But I like your stepwise. I did a half marathon, a bunch of those, and then I did a marathon, and I did some, and then like
uh,
it kind of culminated. That makes sense to me. It's more kind of believable. So that's how you ended up at it. Okay, let's push pause on this one. And we're going to get into, I want to hear more about exactly what you take in during the race. And then I'm curious as to what you eat when you're training, a
Okay.
little more about your training. And I kind of want to get to some of these deeper levels too about, and you started to talk about some of this stuff. What do you believe about, the world and yourself and some of the deeper stuff that is involved, for somebody to do an Ironman. So let me push pause and we'll get back at some of those questions.
Okay.